Good morning, everyone. Here we are today with another great class, and especially this one here. This has to do when you are ready to close. You're ready to make your commission check. At the closing, the happiest day of any transaction. I think there are two happy days, or two happy moments, better said. When you start out, when you sign that executed contract, and then what? When you go to close the CD. The problem is, what is a CD? We need to know what a CD means. So I think I brought in today, I have Anna here, our office manager. And Anna, present your guest here.
And today we have Miss Lorna Reyes. She is going to go over all of the details on these CDs.
CDs are extremely important.
Yes.
As we were talking previously before the class started, you guys as realtors need to see the CDs. Sometimes you'll have some title agencies that aren't too polite and too kind, and they won't send you the CD, but they'll send it to your client. Make sure that your client sends it over to you. You guys have to read that CD and make sure that all the fees are correctly in place for your clients. Well, look, you're going to go over that in greater details. But you also have to see it because once it's been signed, the CD has been signed, I mean, it's really hard to get everybody, all parties back in, to change the CD and so forth. But we're going to let you guys explain all this here a little bit better.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. You guys have an amazing office, by the way. So thank you for having me, and thank you for making the time to be here today. I think this is very important. My name is Lorna Reyes. I work with Westcore Land Title Insurance Company. You guys usually don't hear from us unless there's an issue with the title, so it's a good thing. I call myself a secret agent. If you know of me, then it's a problem. My role pretty much is to work with companies such as Title Partners and other local title companies to make sure that their realtors close their transactions on time and that the buyers don't have an issue going forward. Today's class is very, very exciting. And again, I'm so excited that you guys are taking this class because, again, most of the time we rely on the title company to handle this for us. And the more you know, the more valuable you are as a realtor, okay? Sometimes, again, we just kind of like sit back and let somebody else handle it. But trust me, your clients depend on you to guide them and to educate them and to look after them. That's why the realtor's job, was created. So here's a perfect opportunity for you guys to gain that loyalty with your customers by just making sure that things are going smoothly. And I mentioned earlier before we started, sometimes it's just errors or mistakes that happen. It happens. It's not maybe the title company intentionally trying to do something. Things happen. So your role is just to double check, your partner title company did something, so we're just going to look at it, make sure everything's okay, and then my buyer's taken care of, or your seller. That's all we're doing. So I do speak Spanish. Si tienen alguna pregunta, si algo como que no le va bien, por favor me levantan la mano y me preguntan para yo explicarle bien y puedan entenderlo todo, ¿ok? Perfecto.
So are you going to go today over both sides? We're going to show, as we're going through a CD, we're going to show the seller side and the buyer side. So which one goes which, and credits and debits and things like that.
And we're going to talk about the history of it and how, what happened.
Very important. So.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, so what's a closing disclosure? I mean, we all kind of got a little bit of history about it, what it is. To me, it's the most important document during the closing transaction, right? Because this is going to kind of guide us that this is the end. All the hard work that we did is now arrived, and now we're going to get to closing, and everyone gets paid, and the buyer has their house, and everybody's happy. So like I said, to me, it's probably the most important document that you're going to deal with during your transaction. The CD is also an outline of the terms of the mortgage and costs associated with the closing. So in a real estate transaction, we have to account for every single penny, every single dollar that's been put into this transaction has to be accounted for, and everyone has to know where that money is going to. So your CD is pretty much going to say where all that money is, who is going to, and just make sure that people are getting the right fees and services that they paid for. So there are two different forms, okay? I'm sure you're familiar with it. We have the old one, which is the HUD one that we used to use back in the day, and now we use the CD, the closing disclosure. Now, why are there two forms? Prior to August 1st, there was, during that time in 2015, there were some changes. There was a lot of complaints about the HUD, that it wasn't friendly, that people could not understand it, and there was just a lot of negativity about that document. There also, usually the HUD, the person would get it the day of closing, so they didn't have time to really look at the fees and what am I being charged and what am I bringing to closing, what's going to happen. So there was a lot of new changes that were made during that time. creating the new document. So here we are now. Here's a couple of the important changes that happen and why. With the HUD 1, it's usually a 2 to 3 page, which I find it amazing that they thought it was complicated because the closing disclosure now is like 5 pages long. But okay. They wanted to make it easier for the consumer, so you guys will judge it and tell me what you think. And the cash deals usually are the ones that we do in HUD. Anything that's not trade regulated or federal loans can go into a HUD. Everything else, FHA loans, anything that's trade regulated is going to go in your closing disclosure. So you might still see your HUD 1 when you have a cash deal. And that's why I wanted to bring it up again, because I just want you to get comfortable with both forms, okay? Both parties in the past would get a copy of the same document, where now the settlement statement, the closing disclosure, now has separate parts for the parties, where they're not allowed to disclose, obviously, the buyer's lending information, their terms and things like that. So they're special now. They both have their separate forms and their separate sections. So that's one of the things that make the forms different. Also, like I mentioned, with the HUD, you would get the HUD the day of closing. You guys know now the lender is required to give that disclosure to the buyer 3 days before closing, so that now they have that opportunity to review and say, hey, these fees don't apply. Why am I being charged for this? What are these fees? What are these charges? And just to make sure that everything is clear, okay? So there's several sections, and this is the closing disclosure, and we have the same thing in the HUD. You'll see that they're in different spots now, but your first page of the closing disclosure is going to have all the important information, like the basic information. Who is the buyer, the property address, the closing date. I put date of closing twice, and my apologies. Your file number, your title company information, just pretty much who's in the party involved, about the property, closing costs, and cash to close. Your second page, you're going to have your lender information, the services borrowed did shop for, because you know there's services that they shop for and there's services that they don't, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. You're going to have your total of those fees, and you're going to have your taxes and government stuff that, you know, standard charges, prepaids, your insurance and other items, and then it's going to have, again, just a calculation, so it's going to total all the items out on that page. Your third page is going to have what's due to the borrower, what's due to the seller, and what has been paid, and what they're going to receive at closing. Here are some things that we recommend, obviously, for the buyer to verify. You want to verify that the names are correct. Make sure that everyone that's going to be on title. On my title class, I usually remind you guys that if you're going to have somebody on title, they should be disclosed here. You want to know the length of your loan, make sure it's right. If you're getting a 30-year loan, you don't want to see a 15-year term on your forms. You want to know what loan type it is, your interest rate. All of this is going to be disclosed there. This is just the things that we recommend that you let your buyer know. Just make sure that all those items are the things that you spoke to your lender and that they are correct. So inside your folder, you're going to find like sample closing disclosures. You don't have one? We'll get it for you. So you should have some of the documents. The first one that I'm going over is the Alta Combined Settlement Statement. It says it on the right-hand side. Okay? There should be different attachments. She didn't put it there? That's okay.
The HUD one.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Let me make sure. Yeah, that's fine. So you have the HUD. Which one do you have first? Yeah, let's do the HUD then. So this is the old form, okay? And again, to me, it was very simple. I don't know why they said it was complicated, right? I don't get it. But again, you guys can decide what you like. So The beginning, the first page has the same information that we spoke about. The CD has the first page with all the information. This one has like all the pertinent information on top. The buyers, the sellers, the property, the closing date, the lender, the loan number, if there is one. And remember, this one you're not gonna see it for your FHA transactions. You're gonna see this only for cash deals, for maybe home equity lines, for seller investor financing, or seller financing, anything like that that's not trade regulated, you're gonna see on this, okay? So once we get past the top piece of this form, I usually like to start in the second page. Because then second page, because the first page will make sense to you guys, all right? So we see on the left, we have all the charges and the different sections. On the CD, the sections are labeled section B, section E, section whatnot. Here, they do it by number line. So it's the same thing. If you compare them to, you have both comparisons, you'll see that they have the same sections. The HUD has numbers where the CD has B, E, alphabet letters. So on the left column is all the charges. On the right, you're gonna have all of your fees and who is applied to. Hold on, yeah, I'm getting, the light is bothering me. So on the right is gonna have all the fees that are being charged. So let's start from the top. What do you know? The first section is your commission. So obviously that's the first section that you guys will probably take a look and make sure that it's correct. You also want to make sure that you're getting your settlement, is it settlement fee what they call it? Oh no, the transaction fee.
Yes.
You want to make sure that your transaction fee is there. That's why it's so important to you, for you guys, when you guys get your documents from your title company, that you get those back to them, or make sure that your customers get those back to them, because those are the things that are going to go into this form. And yes, maybe they've worked with you several times, maybe they've done a couple deals, but it's always good to still follow through and send the documents back. Maybe your fee changed, they don't know. Maybe you didn't charge a fee in this transaction, they don't know. So it's important that you guys follow through and send those documents in showing these fees so that they can add these to the settlement statement. And even when working with new companies.
May I?
Yes.
So I also want to add, we have, our system is Qualia, which is extremely amazing because it gives us the ability as a title company to send you guys the contact links where you would just log in, create your account, and then you have a full view on the back end of what that file looks like. But for the commissions and the information of your clients, we ask that it's done in electronic form, which means grabbing that Qualia invite, making your account, and then going in and adding this exact information for us. Because what happens is it funnels into the system. So your commissions, if you have your transaction fees, it's all being asked up front. So don't be surprised when you guys do use the title company and we have new contracts that come in, you're gonna get that email for the invite for Qualia, which does ask for this information. And then on the back end, we'll also need your DA. Okay, all files for us need to close with that DA. We try to get them earlier. So we can input this information as soon as we can, okay?
Perfect. So again, now you're looking for either your seller or your buyer, you're looking through the form. So this is, if you're working for the seller, obviously this is important for you. You want to make sure that the seller's getting charged properly, that it's the right commission amount, and your fees are in there. If it's for the buyer, obviously, you want to make sure this fee is not on the buyer's side. Okay? And again, mistakes happen. I mean, that's probably like a really silly one, but it does happen. So that's what you see. And you see that the total amount that's being charged to the sellers on the right, but then you see the split between the two different companies on the left side where it names the companies that are there, okay?
You don't have the document on that you can put it on the
I can put it up there.
Yeah, because people online don't see it.
Okay.
While she's getting that up, I just want to let you know, if there are any changes with the commissions or with the transaction fees and there are any adjustments that's needed, just let us know. So that way we can, keep our file in real time. We try to keep it in real time because you guys do have that visual access on the back end. So we'd like to see the same exact thing. And, if we need to change it a couple times, it's absolutely fine for us. Just got to kind of keep us in the know, okay?
it up a little bit. All right. Okay, is that better? All right, and like we said, we're gonna go to page 2 because that's the section we're looking at. So now, our second section, we have items payable connected to your loan. So this would be the fees that your mortgage person would normally charge you. In this case, this is not a loan, so you're not gonna see those fees here. But this is the part where you would look at it if you're doing your seller financing or your investor financing or somebody else who's doing that. They're gonna have their flood certification, tax services, their credit reports, obviously appraisal fee. And something with the appraisal fee, and you probably see it on the other one, you're probably gonna see POC, paid outside closing, because normally they pay for the appraisal outside, but everything has to be put on this and disclosed, that those fees were paid, okay? Remember what I said about the line? So that's section 800, now we're in section 900. Items required by lender to be paid in advance. So these, again, part of the mortgage services or mortgage fees, these are all the items that they're gonna have to pay that you kind of have to review and just make sure that they're adequate and they're what's disclosed to the customer when they first talk to their lender. Reserve deposits, your initial deposit for your escrow account, homeowners insurance, mortgage insurance, and property taxes. Now we get to the fun part where you guys can see some stuff. Your title charges, and these are charges that can be shot.
Yes.
Correct. And I also want to talk about, like, for example, title insurance. Title insurance is an item that is optional for the buyer. But if they have a loan, the lender will always get a title policy. And the reason for that is because you never know. Title insurance covers whatever happens in the past, not what happens going forward. And sometimes your buyers might think, oh, because it's optional, I can save money and not pay for that. Never, never. Always advise them to get it. They're only gonna pay for it once. As long as they own that property, that insurance stays with them. They don't have to renew it, or they don't have to buy it again every year like a property insurance, which is what people assume most of the time, okay? So in this case, we have title charges. You're gonna have your title services and lender's title insurance. This is another section that, depending who you're representing, you have to look at who's paying the title insurance, who selected the title company. In Palm Beach, obviously, the seller designates the title, the closer, correct? Because of that, the seller pays for the title insurance for the buyer. So again, those are sections that you might want to consider and look at when you guys are looking at these forms, because you want to make sure the proper person's being charged. Maybe you did negotiate it, and maybe the buyer's going to pay their insurance. Let's just say you have a transaction like that, could happen. Well, in that case, obviously, again, you want to make sure if you're on the seller side, no, I'm not paying for it. The buyer said that they would pick their title company. You need to remove this fee from there. Think about that. What a rock star you are that you were able to catch that and not go to closing, because just like your broker said, by the time you get to that closing, it's too late once you've signed those documents. So you want to make sure that the proper fees are going on the proper lines. So you're going to have your title services and lender title insurance, your settlement or closing fee to the title agent. You're going to have lender's title insurance that's one of the other underwriters that we work with. Lender's title policy limit, owner's title policy. Usually the owner policy or the loan policy is the purchase price or the loan amount. So you'll see that same amount here, and that's how they base the premium for those policies. Agent's portion of total insurance premium, underwriting portion of total premium, and title search and abstract, which is standard, you know. In this case, it's on the seller side, and if you see the other fees as well, it's on the seller side. It's a Palm Beach transaction, so they're covering all the title services fees. Now, government recording and transfer taxes. You have your recording charges, $50. We don't have a deed, I guess. It could be a refi. There's no fees there. Your transfer taxes, no, because we're not transferring the property over. And your state tax stamps for recording a mortgage is $735. And notice all the fees are on the seller side. Now, is it finance? No, it is a sale. My apologies. All right. In this case, there was an attorney. We look at line 1302, and that was representing the seller side, so there's a fee. You have your e-recording for official documents. You have your recording fees there. Copies and storage, which they do. They keep, they're required to keep, just like you guys have to keep your contracts for a certain amount of years. You have your taxes, Palm Beach, 2002, there for the tax collector. And again, this is a seller. These are the things that they have to pay for the closing. Lien search, reimbursements to title search and associates, title partners associates. Then you have your buyer attorney fee. The buyer also had an attorney, so here's a fee for that attorney. We have your listing agent transaction fee that we spoke about, $345. And then we also have any holdback for utilities. So normally title companies will have a hold on the water or any other, maybe there's liens or something that they have to be cured and the buyer's willing or the seller's willing to take care of it. They have to cover, make sure that the buyer doesn't have an issue going forward. So sometimes you'll see cases like this. If you weren't aware of it, again, this is how you figure out, okay, why are we holding money? Why are we doing this? HOA fees. HOA estoppel, which is salary required, HOA outstanding, utilities due to the city, and HOA dues from that month, I guess, when they finally close. And if you notice on the bottom, there's a total there. So it totals all the fees.
I have a question there before you continue. When the seller have a delinquent, whatever, with the water bill, electric, whatever is with the city, you require first he pay whatever he owns, send you proof of the payment confirmation.
Well, that's what I say. They do a hold.
Okay.
If they're taking the responsibility to pay it, they do have to provide the title agent with that proof so they can release the hold that they have.
Because I have a closing
Yes.
before, and the title company will not close if the seller will not pay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he pay and send the payment confirmation, everything. I
Right.
had a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that case, as title comes to the closing date, we'll collect the outstanding amount that we know off of the lien search bill. When the lien search comes back, it tells us what is owed for the utilities. That amount we collect, and then we say, okay, if that amount is excessive, say it's way over our 150 that we hold back, say it's $300. We may actually increase that holdback a little bit just to make sure it gets covered. And in a sense where they do pay the bill before we, say after closing, if they pay before the closing, then you can furnish a receipt to us. We will have to go back to the lien search company, identify where, if that is the exact payment that was owed, and we can make adjustments for there before the closing.
But you got the listing agent advice, what you found when you research.
Well, so when we get the lien searches back, we do release all the lien searches out to the agents. Yes.
Okay.
So you'll get a copy of anything we get. So we want you guys to know, because we want you guys to help us. We're a team, so we need to cure everything together. Of course, we are going to do the most work on our part because we are the title company, but say we can't get a hold of the utility company and you know that they've already paid, send us the receipt.
Right.
We can then investigate further, but with a little more ammunition. You know what I mean?
No, because I hearing so many realtors say at the closing day was surprising. It's good communication as today. I'm surprised.
My opinion is, and you can correct me, so there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you guys have no clue about that they handle.
Yes.
I always say most people think the title companies only print documents and notarize documents, and that's not the case. Their job is to correct everyone else's mistakes and make sure, even people way before you in this transaction, to make sure that everything is good. So what happens is, most of the times, is that they don't get you involved unless absolutely necessary. So unfortunately, yeah, maybe it shows up at the end because I'm sure they've exhausted everything they could, or most good title companies. And I laugh because I tell realtors, if your title company calls you, don't freak out. Because usually, realtors panic and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to close my deal. That's it, it's the end of the world. And that is not the case. If they're reaching out to you, it's because they've reached a point that we need your help.
Yeah,
we really need your help to step in. And that's why now you're getting involved. And your job is to keep your customer happy. Listen, these things happen all the time. It's okay, let's just get past it. See if your customer can help out. Can you call the city? Can you this? If that's a city kind of a pain in the butt, and maybe they call, they can get the information. Or even the HOAs. So that's really what happens in some cases, because I kid you not, if you see the stuff that they have to clear in order for them to close, yeah, it's scary.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
definitely a big old list for the most part.
So much fun. So much fun. And again, the more you guys know, the more professional you are, the more you can handle the situations. And your job is just get to closing, keep everybody happy. Let's just close. I used to tell people, you know, this is like giving birth. It's going to be a little painful. It's going to be a little painful, but we're going to give birth. We're going to do this. I know you guys might not get that, but that's how I used to see sometimes real estate, because it, you know, you went through stuff all the time, but the goal is to close, and you will. All right. So now we have our totals on this page, and now we can go back to page 1 of the HUD, okay? So this is where the fun starts. And let me ask you something. Was that intimidating? Were you guys scared to look at it? Did you get cross-eyed when you saw it, right? No big deal, right? Because I think a lot of the times that's what happens with realtors. They're like, oh my God, look at the paper. Oh, there's so many numbers. What is that thing over there? There's really nothing to it. Just go patiently, read through every line, and just make sure it makes sense. And if it doesn't, you can always ask questions, okay? So now we're page 1 of the HUD. And we have the contract sale price, 105. So you have it on both buyer and seller. You have your settlement charges to borrower, which is what you see on page 2 on the buyer side bottom line. You see it? All right. So you have non-ad valorem. You have an HOA fee from 327 to 41. And usually that is because you're giving credit to the seller because they paid for that already. Okay? If you,
May I?
yeah.
I'm going to just explain how our taxes work in Florida, if you guys know it or don't know it. So our bills are set for ad valorem and non-ad valorem. They have 2 different due dates. So that's why you see them adjusted as one as a credit and one as a debt. Because you have your ad valorem, which is the non-ad valorem, is from January 1 to December 31st. It's your full year. But then you have your non-ad valorem that actually runs from October 1st of the previous year to September 30th of our current year. Okay, so that's why you'll see debts and you'll see credits. The non-ad valorem is a prepaid item on your tax bill. So the seller will actually be paid back for paying their bill. So in Florida, unfortunately for title, we have to make adjustments on the CDs and the HUDs and the ALTAs according to the due dates. So you'll see them identified like that. One credit, one debit, it's one bill, that is your total tax bill. Now if, say, the taxes on that bill, on that property are not paid in advance, we still will make the final adjustments, and then in the other section, the 1300s on this document, we'll actually collect for the taxes in full. So that's just a little more information
Detail.
on taxes, yeah. Because I get that question a lot. They're like, oh, what? My phone rings constantly, and it's like, why is there 2 fees for taxes? And I'm like, okay, let's explain it. And that's the exact reason. It's just because in Florida, they're due on 2 different days. That's really the main reason.
So looking at the document, remember on this document we have by numbers. So the section 100 to 110 are all charges to the buyer. You see that? All those things is things that the buyer has to pay. He's paying 105 for the property. He's paying his settlement fees for the second page, everything that was added on there, and then he has the taxes that he has to credit the seller. So if you look at the 400 section from 400 to 410, those same fees are on that side now because that's what's due to the seller. Now, if we move to the 120, that's the total of it, and 420, that's the total of the everything above. So now we have stuff that are paid on behalf of the buyer. So these are stuff that he's getting in. So he has a deposit of $3,000, that's his escrow deposit. Then he has a seller credit of $1,000 because the sink was broken and a couple other items or whatever, we can make that up. He has seller credits for pool keys. And then he also has taxes on there. Is being charged, yeah. So I guess the seller's already paid for the taxes. So now he's getting a credit for that. So we're gonna add all that and it totals $43.63. We're gonna add the seller side is $14,741. And then on the bottom it's gonna have all the credits and then now the subtractions, I guess, from the credits to the seller and the buyer. And then you have on the bottom your cash from the buyer and you have cash to the seller. Again, was this intimidating? No. We're okay? Okay. So now you remember those sections. Let's go to the CD. Yeah, you can just go down. It's the same one there. Yeah, just put them both there. Okay, thank you. So just like we did with the HUD, the CD, the top section on the HUD is this first page of the CD, pretty much, with obviously a couple exceptions. Usually, the lender, and the first step will be that the lender will send the Alta settlement, the short one?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one that looks similar to the HUD that goes out before this one goes out, just to show everyone most of the fees. But it's not going to include your lender information. Remember, that information is confidential. It's only for the buyer to see. So let's say now your customer's getting their settlement statement. Remember, the buyer and the seller have the different ones. This one's the one that usually the buyer sees, correct? So in this case, you'll see your closing date, when it will be dispersed, usually the same date. You have your settlement agent, your title company, your file number. We'll have a property address. You're going to have your sales price, $365. You're going to have your borrower, your seller, your lender, the purpose, why is this refi or purchase, and your loan ID. Question? Oh, no. So here's your loan amount. In this case, you don't see interest rates and you don't see any of the other stuff pertaining to the loan, but this is where you'll find it. This is where you want to ask your customer, make sure they verify they're getting the right interest rate, the terms, the payment information, that all that information is correct in this section. Then you have payment calculations, year one, the escrow holdings, your taxes and insurances, your closing costs, and your cash to close. So it's a little different than the first of the HUD. Again, we're just trying to spell it out because people felt that the other document was not very friendly. So here's why we have this. So just like in the other case, let's go to the second page, and here's where we're going to find majority of the costs and the closing costs. So you have all your charges on your left. Look at the sections. They're labeled A, B, C. We still have some numbers. For the most part, title lingo, they go by section E, section F. That's how they're going to go over the settlement statement with your customer. So you have your borrower paid before closing at closing. You have your seller paid before closing and at closing. And you have paid by others. So in this case, section A is all your charges from your lender, your origination fee, admin fees, broker compensation, and underwriter fees to your lender. So these are fees that the lender will provide the title company so that they can put it on here. Then you have services borrower did not shop for. You're going to have your appraisal fee. And as you can see, it's the appraisal's paid before the closing, so it's on that different column. So it's not money that they have to bring to closing again because they've already paid for it. You have your credit report fee, flood insurance fee, mortgage insurance premium, tax services fee, third-party processing fee. And then you have your total of what all those charges are. Then we move into things that they could shop for, like your lender's fee, title insurance fee, closing fee, and fees to the title agent. And if you look on there, you have your title insurance, title policy is on the buyer side. You see that? What if it's supposed to be on your seller side? So, exactly. Now we have to contact the title company. Then you have your settlement fee from your both sides for your buyer and your seller, and then you have your search fee that's billed to the seller. And then we add up everything for the buyer, and we have a total of what's been noted on here. Now we go section E. These are all your taxes and government fees and charges. We have recording fees for the deed for the mortgage. You have your second mortgage if you have one. For the doc stamps or intangible taxes, there's a document stamp fee that's paid by the seller. Then we have your document stamps for your official records department. And then your taxes, what's the difference with these? I forgot about these.
So you have in a closing, the seller will pay for the transfer tax on the deed. The buyer will pay for the transfer tax on the mortgage, which includes doc stamps and intangible taxes. So you always see 3 different layers of taxes that the government has to charge every buyer and seller out there, and those are the tiers. So the seller will always pay that transfer tax, and the buyer pays for their loan.
And I remember at school they told us the amount, but I don't remember what the fees are. But if you want to know and do your own calculations, why not? Have at it.
Yeah, on the back end, it's a good rule of thumb to just say that the purchase price, if you multiply it by 0.007, you should be able to come up with that transfer tax. For the deed portion of it, or I'm sorry, excuse me, for the mortgage portion of it, it's 0.035 and also 0.002. So that would go off the loan amount. So again, we handle all that calculation for you, though. You guys don't really have to worry about that on the back end.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a question. Okay.
Question?
No, but I mean, that is the law, so you only have to check, but it's for everyone transaction in Florida.
That's
Right.
right.
But I have a question, I don't know if this is the right moment, about when you want your buyer, because he relied on you, and I want to do the transaction no matter what is the county with title partnership. In that case, can I ask the seller
To pick us as title.
Yes.
Okay, she wants to know if she's the buyer and a listing picks title, how does she get her client to pick, like to pay for, they have to pay for the title?
Yeah, if your clients are picking the title company, then your clients are probably paying for the title policy.
So only the policy?
Title policy. Yeah.
Yes and no.
Title policy.
Yes and no. So on your contract, in that section for who picks title, you have 3 different check marks. You have seller, you have buyer, and then you have Miami-Dade Broward provision. Those all 3 have different responsibilities of who pays for what. Seller pays for title, lien search, and also title policy. Buyer pays for title, lien search, title policy. Miami-Dade provision selected, buyer pays title, seller pays lien search and title search. So they kind of split the responsibility a tad bit.
Which is in section 9, which is in section 9.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit about what are the benefits for the title insurance, to get the title, for the buyer to get the title insurance, like with examples, practical examples?
Sure, for sure. So say there's a claim of lien that when they bought the property, that title company, the previous title company, didn't collect anything for it. When we run our search, we see that it comes up with on our title commitment that we have a few claim of liens, and we have a few old things that were for the previous closing. So as a title company, when it comes up on those searches, it definitely has to be addressed. So we would have to go back. If there was a title policy that was paid for through their transaction, we can rely on their coverage to clear our title. If for some reason they didn't pick coverage and they did not get their owner's policy, it is going to be the responsibility of the owner of the property to fix everything on their own dollar. So there's a huge benefit with getting title insurance. It's always recommended because there are things in the past that a lot of people can't see. And unless you all go to the public records and you do pencil searches and you really get into what that property entails before you even go under contract, taking that due diligence step is not really done. Most real estate agents don't do that or don't know to do that. So as title, making sure that you have the correct coverage is through the title insurance, purchasing it. You know what I mean? Yes.
And what is the amount of the, always is there a rate?
Yes, it's tiered. In Florida, everything is tiered by purchase price. So it's not something that's like a calculated that I can spit out because it goes from like 0 to 100,000. They'll charge $5.75. Next tier, next tier, next tier. So it gets complicated. Yes.
Is it not in a Palm Beach County? Seller has to select title company and they have to pay, not buyer.
Correct. That's exactly. In Palm Beach, typically the seller pays. Again, your contract dictates everything. So if your contract changes, just because it's in Palm Beach County, but the buyer says, listen, I want to pick title, I want to pay for the insurance, let them do it. You know what I
I'd
mean?
like to add one of the benefits of picking of you as a partnership. We're in-house, so your escrow is gonna be in-house. Your closing will be in here. So your clients are gonna be coming to your office to do the closings. That's definitely a benefit. And your escrow is being held by the title company in-house, this partnership. So, yeah, so your money's protected, you can always walk over to us, and we're here to help you and your clients.
And one of the other benefits, I know you guys are hearing a lot about the fraud. There's a lot of stuff going on, fraud and properties. That covers your customer too. There's no worse feeling that you find out that you're buying a property that was a stolen property, pretty much. Somebody took that property and they sold it to you, and now what? So that's kind of what we're seeing a lot more. Yeah, that's what we're seeing a lot more now for title insurance to cover. So again, if you can buy it always later on too, that's an option. But if you're trying to buy it once you have that situation, it's too late.
Right.
Also in pre-construction houses, also there is a title insurance no need for it. Brand new houses, new construction.
Yeah, they should be. I mean, typically when it comes to new constructions, they just kind of bundle the lender, the title company, and the builder all together, and they'll have their own set fees, but that doesn't take away the fact that that property still needs title insurance.
Yeah. So what title insurance does, or what they do pretty much, when they request a title search, they go to the original date that the property was sold and make sure that every time that that property moved hands, it was done correctly. So again, title insurance covers you for anything that happened in the past. It's not anything that happens going forward. So maybe behind, someone didn't do the closing properly. Maybe there was a probate and they didn't probate the property, and now there's an heir out there saying, hey, I have rights to that property, you're in my house. Those are the things that could happen that you never know, that you don't know until somebody pops up and says, hey, that's my property. I wasn't told that this was sold and I want it back. So those are one of the many things that, fraud and things like that, forgery, that title insurance covers, that you're not going to know until you are in that situation. And by the time you're in that situation, if you don't have it, it's too late.
Yeah. Is that true that when you own a property completely free and clear, it's important to have some kind of lien over it? There were cases that in a fraud war, they were selling or buying your house without really.
I mean, maybe something is being recommended not for people, right? Because it has a lien, it makes it difficult for them to release and move that, and that's going to raise a flag. Oh, we have a lien. I don't know. I haven't heard that, but.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, the title, when it comes to titles that have no mortgages, we actually take an extra step on our end, and as title, we send out what's called a PIN number to the actual seller, and we send them a letter in the regular mail. And that is to verify that they actually live at that property, because to your point, there are fraud cases that come up, and they do typically happen on properties that don't have that mortgage. But for us here, we know that. So we take that extra step on every single file that has no mortgage, and we make sure that we get that letter out to the sellers, and then we just say, okay, what's your PIN number? And then they have to give us that PIN number in order for us to go to closing. Because we rely on our searches, and we also rely on them to be who they say they are. So we have to kind of triple check ourselves.
So you send the PIN number and the letter that you send to the owner of the property?
That's right. And we don't do it via email or fax or anything like that. It's done snail mail. It's sent to the address, and we wait for them to tell us what their PIN number is. Okay. And that is a good part of our process to help avoid fraud.
So
we happen with the lots, empty lots?
100%. It happens with any property. Real estate transactions are real estate transactions for us. It's not really differentiated by what type of property it is, because our process really doesn't change. It's just a matter of maybe we have to do less or more on a file, but the process itself doesn't change. And especially lots, because we know nowadays they are targeted for being fraud, right? Yeah, it's bad.
All right. So we definitely have to come back and do a title class for you guys.
I know, that'll be fun. Then you guys can load up some questions, some cool questions.
Yeah. I'll scare the bejesus out of you.
No, no.
All right. So now that we got past our title, we went over our title costs. That's section C, services borrowed, did shop for. And you can see who's paying for what. We have your settlement fee, like we mentioned, the lender policy is being paid by the buyer, and the search fee, which is paid by the seller. And it all depends, like she mentioned, your contract, whatever your contract reads, that's how they're gonna read this. But things happen, mistakes happen sometimes, so again, you just want to double check that people are getting charged properly. Your recording and taxes stuff, we just went over that, and we totaled that at $35.51. You have your prepaid, which is your homeowner's insurance, your mortgage insurance, your prepaid interest, and your property taxes. Then we go into your initial escrow payment at closing. So this is what they're gonna collect, so we can start your escrow, and you can be right on your way and on time to pay your taxes and your homeowner's insurance. And there we have an adjustment as well on the bottom, and we total that. Then we get into your HOA dues. So the borrower's paying HOA dues from fourth quarter. Account of Riviera Beach. For the seller, you have your documentation preparation to the attorney. Escrow holds, like I mentioned, depending if there's a utility or there's something that's outstanding, they usually try to play it safe and do some type of escrow hold. In this case, there's $2,500. Could be many things, but again, just make sure that the fees are correct and they're being charged correctly. Then you have your estoppel that the seller pays. You have your listing agent processing fee paid by the seller. You have your municipal lien search paid by the seller. And usually what I tell people is, for like a good rule of thumb, is the seller, anything that requires for the seller to provide clear marketable title, all those fees that require that, the seller will pay. So they need to do a title search to make sure they know what liens are on the property. They need to do a municipal search to see what else is out there. Do they have a grass violation or any other things? Most of the time you'll see all those charges that require that, that are attached to the property to be cleared on the seller side, so that they can provide a clear marketable title property. Moving forward, we have selling agent commission to the seller. We have the buyer's processing fees. We have a survey fee, title owner, title policy. Here's the owner fee, which is paid by the seller. Remember, the buyer's paying the lender, the seller's buying the buyer title fee here. And then utility holdback, $150, and any wire carrier storage fees charged by the title company. So again, we total this amount, and then we total the whole amount on the bottom. And we can do the calculations if you guys like, but again, just to get familiar with what the charges are. And if we go back, we go to the third, I'm already thinking of the other one, page, you will see everything there. You will see your borrower, due to the borrower at closing, this is what the borrower, the sales price that they're paying and their closing costs, which is the total of that page that we just went over. Then you have adjustments, so we're getting the different charges that they're giving credit for, like we had on the other fee, the other HUD. You have your deposit for the buyer. You have your loan amount, what they're getting for the loan amount. You're getting, there's a second mortgage. There's a title policy adjustment, which is who's paying, remember who's paying what, so the credit's back and forth. And then you have your county taxes, which is the credit that they receive from the seller for the time that they own the property. So from January to July, the seller's giving the buyer a credit for it. And you see on the bottom, you're gonna have all the charges from your section on line L, which is all the top part, 386,507, and then you have all the credits that the buyer's getting, so they're subtracting that. So cash to close, the buyer needs to bring $8,449.43. And on the seller side, pretty much the same thing. You have what's due to the seller, which is the purchase price, $365. Then he's getting credit from the buyer. Then his closing cost that we saw on the other page. Then title policy adjustments, which is another charge for him, and the taxes that he's giving credit for to the buyer. We total everything on the bottom, $365,821, minus all the credits that he's receiving, $18,586, and then you have what's coming to the seller at closing. The rest of the pages are kind of pretty much disclosures. And I never really look at those. What would you say about those?
No, so these are really dictated by the lender. So all the information in this section is really lender driven. For us as title, we're copycatting whatever they tell us here because this is just driven off of their actual fees.
And another thing, so you're not ready to close till you get cleared to close, right? Everybody understands that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're closing yet, because I think the biggest frustration sometimes for title companies is that they tell you, oh, we're clear to close. That's great. But if she doesn't have a package, you're not going anywhere.
Yes, a lender can give us a clear to close, but there could be a huge time gap by the time they get us those documents. So in order for us to sit down and actually sign with the buyers and the sellers, we have to have documents in our hand.
Yeah.
Sellers are a little bit easier because we can control that. We can pre-sign them as title. We can really control that a lot better. But the buyer's lender controls when we actually sit down and do the closings for the buyers. We try our hardest at title to keep them on track. We try to say, okay, we have a closing set for 10 o'clock. Let's stay on track. We could say it till we're blue in the face. Come 11, 12 o'clock that day, if we don't have a package, we clearly have to push what we were hoping for out a little bit towards, maybe a few hours or whatnot. But we are really dictated by the lenders for signing on the buyer's behalf.
But it almost feels sometimes like they push the blame over here.
They'll always blame title.
Yes.
Listen, we are notorious for being the bad guy, and we're okay with that. Like, we have tough skin. We have learned to put on our Ninja Turtle shells and just, hold on to everyone and really keep them happy through the transaction. Because just as the buyers are agitated for not getting to closing on time, us as a title company feel the same way. Like, we really feel your pain. So we can hit on a lender 7, 8, 9 times with no response, and we look at the clock and we're like, okay, we're supposed to sit down with these guys in 15 minutes. We have no documents. We're getting no responses from the lender. Our phones are blowing up, and it's okay, okay? But you guys also need to understand that we are not dictating the buyer signing when it comes to a lender, because we really do have to rely on them to get to the closing table. And if they have a clear to close, so this is a great example. I had a closing, they were a California bank. The lender told me I'm clear to close. I said, excellent, can I have title docs? I need my package. Okay, we're working on them. In that time that they were working on them, something happened to their weather out in California where it knocked out all their power. We didn't even end up closing that day because at the end of the day, by the time the end of the day came, they couldn't physically get me a package. So in those senses, we know that it is irritating, and we do have to kind of adjust and be flexible along with them. Now, if it's a lender who is just dragging their feet and they've been horrible the whole time, no matter what, we still rely on them to get us to closing. So we just try to kind of push them and encourage them to get us what we need as quickly as possible. And we'll keep you guys posted. It's not always what you want to hear, but it's just the path of what we're going through. And we do have to go through it together. So we try to keep everybody at peace, and we really try to keep everybody's emotions down because it's an emotional event. It's something that buyers and sellers, they don't understand. They just know that they want their checks and they know they want the house, right? That's all they know. They rely on all of us to get them there. So as long as we have full communication and we're honest with each other, we'll definitely get there. But again, it may be a little bit emotional because that's what happens. And a lot of people say, oh, well, why do we always have a hiccup at the end of the closing? The reason is because typically with the lender, it's coming out of underwriting. And we know that's a whole nother layer of approval. And with that layer of approval comes with extra requests. It comes with extra things the buyer's gonna have to come up with. So that is typically why we have that hurdle right at the end of the closing. Please just expect it because it is very, very, very common. We try to minimize it as much as we can on title, but again, we can't quite control everything, but we do try our best to get it as quickly as possible.
And I think you guys understanding what the process is, because I think that's what creates a lot of the, nervousness or the hesitance or the people getting stressed out during the closing. Things happen. To me, it's almost like if nothing happens, it's kind of like what's wrong? Something's wrong.
That's right. Where's the
Something's
hurdle?
wrong. There's
There's
something
gotta be a
wrong.
hurdle.
It's too perfect. What? It's not. There's something wrong. So just be expecting that there are going to be things. It's just things that you guys have to overcome, and you guys understanding what they do, how they do it, what really happens behind the scenes. Because again, the lender's going to tell you one thing. What if the lender's in California? 3 o'clock over there, their time is 6 o'clock over here. To them, oh, I sent it at 3 o'clock. But who's going to close at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock? Because if they send it to you at 4, it's nighttime here already. That's not the title company's fault, because even though they have the package, they still have to review that package. They still have to make sure they have all the documents. They have to make sure that everything that they're getting is correct. Like I mentioned to you guys, their job is to make sure everybody else does their job. So it's not guaranteed that just because they get the package, it's going to be correct. Have you had to send packages back?
Oh yeah, great example. We just did it. We had a closing. It was a guy and a girl. They were told by the lender however, they were husband and wife. They were mother and son. So it changed the whole entire closing package. So we ended up having a closing package that had them as husband and wife, and we were like, okay, but we don't have them in our system as that. This is the mother, this is the son. Lender was like, oh, oops, we made a mistake. That delayed our closing by 3 hours because by the time they fixed it on their end, got us back the new docs. So we did have to get that file closed later in the day because the lender needed to send us new docs.
And then remember,
And that's very common.
and they also have those 3 days. So if there is something that requires that they have to issue those 3 days again, now you've been delayed 3 more days on your closing. So make sure when you guys are getting your CDs or you're getting documents that you guys look at everything, get familiar with it. If you're not still comfortable with it, just keep asking for them, for the documents. Again, most of the time realtors don't even ask for these forms or these documents. They don't even look at them. Get familiar with it. If you look at it, the more often you look at it, the more you read between the lines, you're going to pick it up and you're going to be an expert. You're not even going to have to go to section whatever. You already know where you're going to look at or what you need to pick up, because it's going to be automatic for you guys. So the more you see it, the more comfortable you get, the better you're going to be at it. So, and like I showed you, a lot of times what happens is realtors are like, oh my God, I see all these lines, all these numbers. Oh my God, there's nothing to it. Just look at it, drink your coffee, enjoy it, and just make sure that everything is where it needs to be, and that's it.
And with the new law in Florida for cash transaction that the buyer must be present, if he's out of state or out of country, you send it to notary?
Yes, and great question. And this is it's not really on topic, but that's okay. This is a great point to bring up. So July 1st, there was a huge change in real estate where there are now buyers that have to attest that they are not foreign. And they have to do this through a form that has to be notarized. And it has to have a wet signature. So even your cash deals right now, there's no more electronic signatures right now. It's a very new law. It's something that everybody is working through, but even cash transactions, because it is a notarized document. It's a very interesting affidavit. So if you guys want to look it up, it did take effect July 1st, and it's for non-foreign buyers.
And I think the contract changed as well.
Contract
No, but
change,
if
yes.
it's a citizen? If it's a
Doesn't
registered
matter.
citizen?
Has to be on every single file. Citizen, they have to attest that they are not foreign. Yeah. And I know we've always done a lot of cash deals, DocuSign, but
Bless
again,
you.
this has changed that for us as well. So everybody has to come in. And again, it's new, so everybody's getting used to it. But it may change. Hopefully they'll change it to where we can go back to DocuSigning for our cash buyers. But right now we do have to bring them in the house as well.
So everybody has to sign whatever is cash.
Every buyer. Every single buyer.
I have a question. Do you guys, are you allowed to send the CD to the realtor? Because some type of companies, they don't send it, just to the buyer or seller.
We send our CDs to everybody. We like to keep everybody in the know. Because without you guys, we don't have that second set of eyes. Again, you guys make these contracts. We try to follow them as best as we can. Through our closing, say we're closing in 30 days, there could be addendums that are done that we didn't get as title. With you guys being that second set of eyes for us, you can say, oh my goodness, that credit's not on there. Call us up and say, hey Anna, that credit's not there. Did you get the addendum? And I'll look in my file, and if it's not on there, the chances are I don't have that addendum. and then we'll ask for it and we'll get it on there for you. We all want to try to get this to closing exactly the way it's supposed to close. The expectations of the buyers and sellers have to be met, right? So that follows with the contracts that are written. So we try our best to stay on that.
We are not anymore with Partnership Realty. We have inside title partners now because it was for a long time ago.
Yeah. So Partnership Title has made some great changes. We have changed into Title Partners West Palm Beach, and there was a layer of employees that were here that are no longer here. That's why you have seen our new layer of staff. We are all amazing. We have great long experience in the title insurance business. So yes, to answer your question, we have made a change. It's a name change from Partnership Title over to Title Partners West Palm Beach.
So that means we have the credit as a realtor. If we choose you guys, we're going to have a credit for transaction fee. I think I understand that.
Yep, go ahead and speak to, yeah. Nothing's changing along those lines. Again, the only change for you guys is the name of the company and where to send the contracts to. We've kept everything else parallel. No, we don't want too many changes for you guys. So,
I hope we don't have any issue that before with another type.
yeah, me too. Do our best, that's what we're here for. Again, we're always going to work the best together with communication. We don't mind you guys calling us. We don't mind you guys emailing us. We encourage you. Please come over to the title side. Come sit down. We have a lot of agents that just come and sit with us during the day. Come on.
Through the chat, you have inside a lawyer to any question.
Yep, we do have an attorney on staff. He is able to answer any questions. There could be some fees that come along with that. So just be sure when you speak to him, if, bring up the question if there's any cost to doing business with him.
That's good.
Yep.
You will be in the office here?
He is not in this office. He is in our Miami branch. Yes.
Yeah, I knew that person who founded that. As a couple.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of areas, and definitely we need a little more title revisit. So I'm happy to come back later on if you guys decide that that's something you want to do. Thank you for having me here today. You guys were awesome. So thank you.
Thank you so much for everybody.
Yes, thank you for coming. Now, if you guys have specific topics that you want to talk about, get a hold of Kiara.